Today is July 24th, 2013, 10 a.m., and we're sitting with Dave Pike.
All right. Okay. So thanks again. If you don't mind starting with where you're from originally, and then we can just kind of go through.
Well, again, I'm Dave Pike, and I'm actually a native of Colorado.
Okay.
I was born in Boulder, and I was raised in Fort Collins. I attended Colorado State University and went to work for the city of Fort Collins with the Parks and Recreation Department there in 1984. In 1988, I moved to Monte Vista, Colorado, where I was the Parks and Recreation Director, and I continued doing that in Monte Vista for 8 years. And then I applied for a job here in Craig as the director, and I was fortunate enough to get it, and I've been here ever since.
Okay.
So
work brought you here.
Work brought me here. I grew up skiing in Steamboat, and believe it or not, I had never been to Craig until I came here for an interview.
Oh, okay.
So I lived here all my life and never been to Craig.
Okay. And how did Craig compare when you came here from the other parts of Colorado where you had lived?
Well, I'm kind of particular. I like the mountains, and I like to fish, and I like to hunt. And so when I moved to Monte Vista from Fort Collins, it was kind of culture shock, because I went from Fort Collins, a town of close to 100,000 people, to a town of 5,000 people. So, but as I stayed there longer, and over the 8 years, I really came to like the small town living. And so when I came to Craig, I was already kind of used to small town living. And,
okay.
And this was twice as big as Monte Vista, but still only about 10,000 people, 9 to 10,000 people.
Right.
So it was great, and I knew this area from growing up in northern Colorado, and like I said, I had skied in Steamboat before, and so I was somewhat familiar with the area. But as I lived here for a couple of years, I found that there was a lot here in Craig and northwest Colorado that I like. So especially the hunting and the fishing and the access to all the mountains and different landscapes. Of course, down at Browns Park's one of my favorite places, and
right.
Dinosaur National Monument. So it was a pretty good fit for me, and a nice match.
Okay. What were the people like initially?
Actually, I thought they were really friendly when I first moved here.
Okay.
When I first moved to Monte Vista, I didn't think they were as friendly as I was hoping for, and they were a little cliquish. But as I got to know them in Monte Vista, I still have some really good friends there. But when I came to Craig, it was a little bit different. I thought people were more outgoing and a lot more apt to make newcomers feel welcome. So that was one of the nice things that I remember about when I first moved here.
Okay. All right. And what did your job entail when you first came to Craig?
Well, when I first came to Craig, there was several items on the table. Woodbury was just getting built, and they wanted to complete it and turn it into a sports outdoor sports facility, and so that was one of the items that they charged me with. And then they wanted to put together the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and start planning for the future and planning for future development in Craig. And so we did those things. The first couple of years I was here, I really concentrated on getting Woodbury Park finished. They'd started it, but it kind of stalled there out for a while, and so we went in there and finished the baseball fields, put in an additional field that's now called Jake's Field, and put in the basketball courts and the volleyball courts, and the gazebo and several shelters, and built a parking lot, and got it ready to host not only weekend tournaments, but also all of our youth activities were moved out there, such as t-ball, coach pitch, baseball,
Okay.
Football, and before then, I think those activities were kind of done in a number of different places, including the schools, and with the completion of Woodbury, we would be able to host all of our outdoor youth sports programs all in one place. So that was nice, and I believe we completed that probably within about 2 years after I arrived.
Wow. That seems pretty quick.
Well, we had some help from GOCO. We got a Great Outdoors Colorado grant, and we just kept plugging along, and finally got it to where it is now, and it's a really nice facility. It was so long ago. It's time to start looking at that facility again and replacing some playground equipment and some things like that. But it's a facility that gets lots of use in the summertime. We've hosted several Triple Crown baseball tournaments there that brings hundreds of people to town.
Wow.
And of course our own programs. I believe we have over 300 kids in soccer this year, and
wow,
I think somewhere around 25 teams. So Woodbury Park gets a lot of use, and it's a real asset for our community.
Okay. So there's a lot of community involvement there.
Oh yeah. Like I said, all of our sports programs that we run in the summertime, other than girls softball, are played at Woodbury, and the only reason we don't play girls softball there is there's times that we have as many as 10 or 12 games going on at the same time when you talk about t-ball, coach pitch, baseball, and girls softball. So of course the girls softball program is out at Woodbury, and it's Woodbury Park is out at Loudy, and Loudy is a real good venue for softball, and Woodbury Park is probably a better venue for baseball. So
okay.
So yeah, it gets a ton of use. It's an amazing sight if you go out there and during a baseball tournament when soccer's playing at the same time, and we have several hundreds of people out there all participating and watching games. So yeah, it's, like I said, it's been a real asset for this community.
If it's so, you talked a lot about how it's used in the summer. What happens during the winter? What is the use?
You know, the winter months. The winter months here, as I'm sure the rest of the folks that you've interviewed have told you, winter can be long and cold here in Craig, and so if we want to do winter activities, and you want to live here, you get used to doing winter activities, and you need to be hardy to do so. As far as Woodbury is concerned, it probably doesn't get a lot of use in the wintertime other than some cross-country skiing. People are more apt to make their own fun in Craig in the wintertime, and that includes snow machining and skiing and things like that, and those are things that we're not so apt to provide because we're fortunate enough to have all this open space around us and all these national forests and BLM land that people tend to go that direction in the wintertime.
Right.
But spring, summer, and fall, Woodbury's heavily used.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. I didn't know if hockey was any.
We do have hockey here, and it's actually played. We have an ice rink that's out at Loudy Simpson Park, and we have several youth hockey teams. That particular program is run by a parent association, and so from over the years we've helped with registration and some things like that. But that's actually run by the parents, and they do a great job at it, and so we don't try to fix it if it's not broken.
Right, of course. Okay. Yeah, I was just always curious about that. I assumed hockey would be big here.
It is, and we have a nice indoor rink.
Yeah. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Oh, the whittling. When did that start? How did that come?
Whittle the Wood. Ah, yes. We got to talk about Whittle the Wood. When I first came here, I was a little bit concerned with the age and the condition of a lot of the trees in the parks, and so it appeared to me that at some point in time, several years before I'd gotten here, the trees had been topped, and that wasn't an uncommon thing 20, 30 years ago. In order to, I guess, before folks were aware of the damage that you can do to trees by topping them, it was the easiest way to go in and take care of a tree. You just cut the tops off and let them grow out again. That's actually one of the worst things you can do to a tree, because it really takes the integrity of the tree. All the branches that grow up from after you top the tree, they're really just sucker branches, and they don't have any integrity, can't stand up to wind load and snow load. And so as I went through the parks, I did a hazard tree evaluation, and put together. I went through each and every tree, notated what damages were done to it, and I had a scale and tried to determine which trees that I thought needed removed versus some that just needed trimmed. And then, of course, how many new plantings we had to do. And specifically in City Park, there was a number of trees, upwards of 20 or maybe more, that looked to be all the same age, looked to be all had been topped at the same time, and there was, and probably at least half to 3/4 of them needed to be removed. And the reason why they needed to be removed is because after the trees get to that age, and of course the condition after their topping, they really become a liability to the city, so I was a little bit worried about them. But I'd gone through some of the same. I've gone through that same process in Monte Vista, and I was young and green, and after I determined what trees needed to be removed, we just went in and removed them. Right. And boy, did I hear about it in the newspapers and from the general public. Why did you cut down all those trees? And so I wasn't going to make that mistake twice. So at a staff meeting, after we determined which trees needed to be removed, I told my parks guys that we need to get a hold of the public. We need to have some public process here and let everybody know the reasons why we're taking out the trees, so we don't just one morning everybody wakes up and all the trees are gone out of City Park, because they'll crucify us. Right. So one of my parks guys at the time said, well, why don't we get a couple of those trees carved? We'll just leave, and so we'll maybe remove the trees that we really need to remove, and then leave 2 or 3 of the stumps and have them carved, and maybe that won't be such an impact on everybody, and they'll think that's pretty cool. And then I got to brainstorming during that staff meeting, and I said, well, what if we turned it into a competition, and all the trees that we're going to remove, we'll just have all of them carved. And so everybody thought that was a good idea, so I did some research, and I talked to Breckenridge at the time was doing a wood carving contest. They've since changed and gone to ice carving, but at that time they'd done one for a couple of years, so I called them up and got some ideas from them, started calling carvers, and the first year we had 6 carvers come up, and we probably had about, I'm going to say maybe 300 people show up to watch it, which if there was 300, and it just kind of grew from there. But I remember the first year that we did it, it was actually, people were pretty amazed. They came down there after the competition, because when you ever start something new, you don't have a lot of people don't attend. They just but as we progressed and word of mouth, people started coming down, and we really did have that year 3 or 4 of those carvers that were exceptional, and they did really, really good work. And so this thing caught on, and hey, let's do this again. And actually, the trees that we carved those first couple of years were actually trees that were live trees that were still in the ground, and we cut them off about 12 to 15 feet tall. Removed the rest of the branches and just left this stump for these folks to carve. Right. And so we did that for, we did it in the north end of the park, then we did it at the south end of the park. We did a couple more in the north end of the park in year 3, and then by then we were out of trees that needed to be removed out of the parks, and so then we started getting these big cottonwood stumps or any kind of stumps we could get from the tree trimmers that were local, and we'd plant them in the ground, and then it kind of evolved, and now we're to the point where we have 12 carvers almost every year. We limit it at 12. We have a free concert that this year we had 4,500 people come through the gates on Saturday, and so it's really evolved into quite a festival, and it's called Whittle the Wood Rendezvous, and this was our 14th year doing it. We're pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish with that program.
Yeah.
We have over 90 sculptures throughout town now.
Wow.
And we have an interactive map that you can get at the chamber, and so for tourists coming through town, they can look at that map and locate the ones they want to go find, because we not only are they just in City Park now, but we have them out at Loudy Simpson, we have them up and down the highway, we have them in several of our different parks, we have them, some of our more intricate carvings over the years we've had to put indoors. We actually have one here at the museum, and so those need to be protected. So every year they're just distributed throughout town, and I think as far as I know, our carving contest is probably the longest running one in Colorado, and I think it's probably as successful and as popular as any of them. We've been on several different TV shows and aired nationally. On I believe Whistle Stop had us on one year, and there was another outdoor channel that filmed our little competition. About 3 or 4 years ago, the carvings in City Park went, they call it viral on the internet, and people were sending to me from all over the United States saying, "Have you seen this? I got this from some guy in Europe that said we need to go look at these carvings that are in Craig, Colorado," and the thing went viral. So actually, if you Google wood carving, images of wood carving on Google, a lot of times the carvings from Craig will pop up on images of wood carving. I did it the other day, and I was surprised how many of the images were actually from Craig. They're of course all over the world, these images, but I think we've got 6 or 7 that pop up on Google, and so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So what does the carving process look like? What kind of tools do they use?
It's all chainsaw. Our rules are very simple. You can use chainsaws. You can use power tools, but the stumps that we carve are big, and so they start with chainsaws. And as this competition progressed, I learned a lot more about it, and I found that this wasn't a new thing that we did, although it was new to us, and we dreamt it up during a staff meeting. There's guys in the Midwest, and especially on the West Coast that do this for a living, and so they might have 10 different chainsaws of all different sizes, and when they're first working on their stump, they're using a real big chainsaw until they get down to some real delicate stuff, and they're using a real small chainsaw. But we give them 4 days to do their project, and they can use, a lot of times they'll use routers, they'll use sanders, they'll use, but I'd say the majority, 90% of their work's done with a chainsaw.
Okay, and you give them 4 days.
4 days to do it. There's prize money included now, and the carvings become property of the city of Craig after they're done.
Okay.
But we treat the carvers pretty well, and that's why we feel like we get top-notch carvers here in Craig, because we pay for their room and board the entire time we're here. We give them a per diem, and of course they're competing for prize money. That's first place is $1,500. So.
Oh wow.
They also have an opportunity to sell all their wares, and because these guys do this for a living, they bring lots and lots of carvings to sell, and they do quite well on the Saturday of Whittle the Wood, because we always include the final day with a free concert for the community, and we've had some really fun bands in the past, including the Outlaws, Poco. We had Pure Prairie League, we had Commander Cody, Blue Oyster Cult. Rare Earth, Let's see, who else did we have? We had Dave Mason. He's actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We had him one year. He put on a great show. This year we had Cracker, and then of course we give the opportunity for a lot of our local bands to get up and perform in the early afternoons before the headliners come on. So that's been a really popular part of Whittle the Wood, is our excuse me, is our live free concert. And the whole thing's been free for the community since it started, and we hope to continue it to be a free show. So
right.
So we have a large arts and crafts fair on that Saturday. This year we had about 40 booths of local arts and crafts folks, along with our carvers that are selling their wares, and so it's a fun day.
Yeah. And when does it usually take place?
It's taking place every year on Father's Day weekend.
Father's Day weekend. Okay. The one here in the museum, it looks like it's partially, I don't know what the process is called. It looks like it was burned or smoked or something. Is that typical for these carvings?
That is. A lot of times they'll burn their carvings to try to give it a little more detail and a little bit of contrast. And some of these guys are really good. They'll put on they'll kind of wait until they have a good crowd on Saturday around them, and out comes the torches, and then they start lighting those.
So that is allowable.
Oh yeah, okay. They start lighting those trees on fire, and when it's all said and done, it's an amazing effect that they put on those trees. So yeah, that's pretty popular with a lot of these carvers. We allow them to paint the carving.
Oh, they can paint.
They can paint, but and we've had some that have some really nice ones. We actually have a parrot that a local guy did that he painted, and it turned out really good. One of our carvers painted some frogs one year, and those turned out well. But it seems like the burning really it gives it a natural look, and it really gives it some contrast and some depth perception. So I think that's something that's becoming a lot more popular.
Right. Yeah, the one out here is we looked at the detail of it, and it looks like is it lacquer? Is that what it's called? Do you kind of stain it or whatever?
Yeah, a lot of times we have to stain all the carvings throughout town because they're outdoors, and we just use we just thin down linseed oil and put it on them. But the guys, when they first treat them, they all have their secret recipes that they'll put on to give it a if they want a glossy shine or and those are so. The first year that they're put out to the public to see and they're finished, they have a multiple of finishes on them.
Okay.
But as far as we go and treat them with linseed oil in hopes to preserve them for as long as we can.
Right.
The ones that we did the first year, there's not very many of them left. They've finally rotted and fallen over and just disintegrated.
Okay.
So 14 years ago, when those trees were bad and some of them were needed to come down. Well, nature played its course, and now they're gone.
Right.
They just fell over.
Okay. So if they are temporary, then how do you decide where to place? I mean, we can see them driving up and down Victory. I'm assuming the ones all up and down Victory come from the competition. Right now,
there's been some thoughts to sell the carvings to private folks to help fund the event itself, because it is a very expensive event to put on. But I've tried to stay away from that because I want the carvings to remain in a public place so everybody can enjoy them for as long as you can.
Right.
I'm afraid if somebody were to buy one of our really nice carvings, although it would help us financially, then that carving might disappear into to somebody's ranch and we'd never get to see it again.
Yeah.
And so I've always tried to pick public places to put it, such as the courthouse or in our flower. A lot of our big flower pots, we've put them in there.
Right.
We've put them at City Hall. We've taken them out to Loudy Simpson Park, which is a county park. We've taken them to the Justice Center. We've taken them to the fairgrounds, and of course we've left a lot of them in City Park.
Right.
And so we kind of pick and choose. Hopefully we can find a common theme, like the one that we brought to the museum. The one that the museum's going to get this year is a gunfighter asleep under a cactus, and so so it's kind of a theme too. We put a bull rider out at the fairgrounds. We put a guy fishing.
Saw that one.
Right.
Yeah.
A guy fishing out at the kids' pond. We put one that's called Justice at the Justice Center.
Okay.
We have an eagle at City Hall, and so we try to find some sort of theme that perhaps combines the two.
Right.
And so it's just kind of
that's really cool.
Yeah. So that's it doesn't always work out that way, but we try our best to try to have it so it fits in with its surroundings.
Right. And it's open theme for the carvers.
It is an open theme. That's another thing that's been suggested to me, that we have a theme and say, well, okay, this year we're all going to do dinosaurs, or this year we're all going to do horses. I think that takes the creativity away from the carvers, and those guys do it for a living, and some of these guys, they'll stare at their carving for an hour or better, and one guy, he says, I got to wait till the wood speaks to me before I know what to do, and so rather than take that element out of it, I just keep it an open competition, and then you never know what you're going to get, and some of them, it's been amazing. We go, for a long time we were getting a lot of wildlife and Native American themes, and then out of the blue, a couple years ago, we got a grandfather clock that got first place. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
We got a crocodile eating a seagull. I mean, I just out of the blue, we got some of this crazy stuff, and so I like to leave it an open competition and let those guys let their creative juices go and get some neat stuff here.
Right. If as you said, nature kind of takes over, and some of these carvings are rotting and they're not anymore. Just kind of, if we could preserve maybe the memory of some of these, what were some of the more memorable pieces that you can think of?
Oh, I remember Faye's eagle. The very first year she did it. We have one carver that's been to every competition but one. She's been to 13 of them, and she was there at the very beginning. I remember she did an eagle down in the north end of City Park, and it really turned out good. And when it fell over, it literally disintegrated.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had, trying to think, there was an Indian. There was an Indian with a papoose on its back, and that was done by a guy. He was from, I believe, Romania. I'd have to look back.
Oh wow!
And his, again, it just disintegrated and went away.
Right.
And I think we had, I believe, one of our local guys, thinking it was Greg Kinez, did Tigger the Tiger. And that's long gone. That same year, I believe, Dave Griffith did parrots, and believe it or not, they've made it, and we moved those inside the swimming pool, and they're by the trees in the swimming pool. And that one, I'll tell you what, he was in maybe the third year going, and most of those trees have rotted and gone away, and his, for some reason, has lasted. Whether maybe it was because of the paint on it, but his is still living, and that was one of my favorites, because I remember that first couple of years we had a tough time getting carvers because we hadn't established ourselves as a renowned carving competition. So I was going around begging local people to do it. And I begged Dave Griffith to do it one year, and I begged Greg Kinez to do it, and Delbert Kinez got in it one year. And these guys had never carved anything, ever. And their carvings really turned out good. I remember when Griff was done with his, he said, I'll never do it again. He said, those guys made it look so easy, and I was here sweating and worked from dusk to dawn on mine and barely got it done by the deadline. And he said, that's it. And I've tried to get him to do it ever since, and it's always the same answer: is nope, I'm done. I did it once, and I'm not going to do it again. And I think Delbert was the same way. I think I did maybe get Greg to do it twice, Greg Kinez, and seems like I had another local. We've had, I think, 4 locals do it. Yeah, the ones, they just kind of, I do have a written history of all the carvings that have been done over the years, over 14 years, and of course we've averaged about 12 a year.
Right.
And so that's a lot of carvings.
Yeah.
And as I look through the map, there's only 80 or 90 in the map, so I don't know how many are gone by now, but I'm going to think we've lost 30 or better over the years.
That'd be
and that
about
would,
168 carvings.
There you go. So yeah, it would actually be probably a pretty good idea to write down all those carvings and have it somewhere. That's a really good idea. And
I just thought maybe preserve some of the ones you really stand out.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones was a gargoyle, and I believe that was from year 1. And it fell over, but the gargoyle itself was still intact, and it's down in Parks and Recreation now.
Oh, okay.
And he was a guy from Wales, I believe, that did that one.
From Wales?
Yeah, and we got some crazy guys at the very start of this. We got 2 guys from, I believe it was Romania, and we got a guy from Wales, and then we got another guy from, a couple of guys came from, Czechoslovakia or one of those, and they planned their vacation, or actually they call it holiday. They came to the United States and had never been here before. One was probably in his 50s, and the other one was in his 20s, and they made a holiday out of it and spent about two months in the United States. But
Wow.
They came here specifically for the carving competition, and I asked them, well, how, they told me they had to save up a whole year's savings so they could come over here and get in the competition and then travel around the United States.
Wow.
So they felt like it was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and they were never able to afford to come back.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The international attention is really intriguing to me.
Right.
All these people coming from...
I know, I couldn't believe these
Europe.
guys just came out of nowhere. And then, and that was probably in the early 2000s, and then the guy from Wales, he got in contact with us this year again, finally, and he was going to come back this year, and at the very end something came up, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him back again next year.
Right. Wow. Well, just out of curiosity again, what would one of these carvings sell for if you were to sell them?
It kind of depends on the girth of the tree. A good rule of thumb is about $100 a foot.
Okay.
These carvings are now about usually between 10 and 12 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
But in the old days, the wood that we used were some massive cottonwoods.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one guy that used to come a lot. His name was James. What's his last name? He was from Black Forest. Really good guy. And he got first place one year with some bears climbing up a big tree, and with some there were some beehives hanging from the branches that he carved, and they were reaching into the beehives and lapping up the honey.
Wow.
But it was a really big circumference on this tree.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he probably wouldn't have sold that for less than about $2,500.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of depends. I'm sure that clock that got first place a couple of years ago, it's in City Hall. I'm sure that's a $2,500 piece.
That
I'm
seems
just
more
sure of it.
reasonable than I thought for the amount of time that goes in. But
Right, and they, it just, I think if they were just to do a simple bear that was 10 feet tall, that might be $1,000. But when they start putting some work into it and really getting it intricate,
right,
then the price starts going up. The price of poker goes up, so they say. So I would say anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 would be an average for most of these carvings that we have around town.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's cool seeing all of them, and we need to make it down to the park so we can check those out.
You should go down. Yeah, I think you get to see you get to see a good amount of them, a good gathering of them down at City Park.
Okay.
And so that's a really nice little foot tour that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, some of them you have to drive to. But we kind of like to keep a good concentration of nice carvings down in City Park, and as they grow old and decay and die, replace it with another nice one, because it seems like folks from out of town tend to stop there first. You know, any day out of the summer you can drive through City Park and there's somebody out there taking pictures of them. And it's crazy. But people hear about it and they stop and walk around town, stay here for 15, 20 minutes, maybe get lunch, and then off they go on the rest of their vacation. But I think this competition has brought some tourists to town, and hopefully it's put Craig on the map a little bit.
Yeah. That's awesome. What other type of projects or community activities have you seen develop since you've been here? Or have you overseen bringing into Craig?
You know, of course, Whittle the Wood is a big one. We've over the years we've worked hard on trying to put together a trail system. We have the beginning of one, and I really hope to see that continue to get bigger and get more trails. Trails are tough to build if you don't have a natural corridor. Obviously our natural corridor is the Yampa River, but unfortunately that doesn't go through town. So when you do trails in town, you have to find other natural corridors, and to some extent we've done that along the Craig Ditch.
Okay.
And so we have the beginning of a really nice trail system that goes from Sunset School up to Ridgeview, past the hospital and the college, and up to the Ridgeview subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on getting that all in concrete right now.
Okay.
And so I'm pretty excited about that. I'd like to see us develop another trail along Fortification, and I think we might see that in the next few years.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty. The city was quite involved with the expansion of Elkhead Reservoir, and on my end of it, I was fortunate enough to get a grant working with state parks and the River District, and did a lot with the development of the boat dock area and the campgrounds and all the amenities out there with the fire pits and the picnic tables and the trail out there, and I was pretty excited about that little development, because when I first moved here, Elkhead was over. The city was kind of over Elkhead, but it didn't really have the resources to develop Elkhead like the potential was out there. And when we expanded the reservoir, and state parks manages it for us. Currently, they manage it for us. We teamed up with them and made a really nice reservoir and our residents, I think, really enjoy what's out there now.
Okay. Wow. So you've been busy.
Busy. The other thing one of my goals was to replace all the playground equipment in every one of the parks, and we finally got that accomplished 2 years ago. So every single park in this town has new playground equipment, although we started the process about 10 or 12 years ago. So again, Woodbury's the first one we put new playground equipment in, and finally when we got through with all the parks, now it's almost time to go back and start looking at Woodbury and upgrading that equipment again. But I'm pretty pleased with the support we get from City Council and our ability to put nice amenities in our parks. So that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, we have the only wave pool on the western slope.
Oh.
And
that's at the main pool, right?
We do. We have 2 outdoor pools, a lap pool and a wave pool. The facility itself is beautiful. You won't see one like it around, with the grass and the big trees. It's right in the middle of the city park and all the carvings there, and it has a wave pool that generates some pretty big waves. And so keeping that thing, it's an old pool. I believe the wave pool is over 30 years old, and the lap pool, I think it's 50. And again, with the support of the City Council, we've been able to keep that pool up and going, and I think that's probably, if you talk to the kids around town, probably one of the most popular places in Craig in the summer. So
Yeah, I bet.
it's busy every day.
Yeah.
So that's a unique feature, having the only wave pool over here.
Yeah. A lot of people all that. Wow. How have you seen the rest of the community in general develop in your time here? Have you seen a lot of change?
You know, I think the biggest change I've seen over the last 5 years is the younger families, maybe not, some of them moving here because of jobs, but also becoming more active in the community.
Right.
And so when I first moved here, it didn't seem like there was as many young families being active, whether it be in the Parks and Recreation or just in general, trying to better the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me over the last 2 or 3 years, there's really a push towards not only making our schools better, but making our Parks and Recreation facilities better. And of course, there's been talk of a recreation center, and I attribute that a lot to the younger. When I say young, I say 30s and 40s, because I'm getting up there now. I'm 56 now.
Uh-huh.
It seems like just yesterday I was one of those young kids, 30 and 40, but time flies when you live here in Craig.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, I'm pretty impressed with the younger families that want to do make Craig a better place to live. You know, my dream before I leave is to hopefully we'll see a recreation center here. And I think it's a real possibility. It just takes baby steps, and I think these young people that are getting active in the community will have a big impact on whether we see a recreation center here or not.
Where would it go?
You know, that's at one point in time we actually went to the vote of the people for a rec center back in I'm going to say 2005, 2006. It was defeated. But at that time, it was going to be built up where the new hospital and the new college campus are.
Okay.
And there's still some room up there for us, and CNCC has been generous enough to hold on to that piece of property for us. So if we see if we get a push for a rec center again, I think that's probably going to be the logical place for it, because it's kind of a little hub up there, and our growth tends to be to the west here now.
Oh,
and,
right.
And so, and of course, with the new college campus up there, it only makes sense to have a rec center close to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we ever do get one, I think that'll be the location for it.
Okay. Just kind of to wrap up in summary, do you have any closing thoughts on Craig or the state of recreation and leisure activities here?
No, I think. No, not really. I mean, like I said, over the last 6 or 7 years, I've really been impressed with the support we've got from City Council and a lot of other communities. And talking to my peers, Parks and Recreation isn't considered a service that it's considered a lot of times in financial tough times. The Parks and Recreation services are cut, and I feel pretty fortunate that our city councils felt strongly enough that the quality of life issues that Parks and Recreation bring to the table are important enough that they've funded us, and so
Right.
I see that continuing, and so that's good for Craig, and it's good for its residents. Anytime you can give people alternate activities and keep them busy, then keeps kids out of trouble. It promotes healthy lifestyles, and those are all the things that Parks and Recreation bring to the table. And so not only do we have a nice Parks and Recreation department within the city here, but we're surrounded by parks on all sides, and
Right.
It's a great place to live. And if you want to bring up your kids in a community with those kind of amenities, then this is the place to be.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
You bet. Appreciate you letting me yak away.
Yeah. That's awesome. That Whittle the Wood